There she is, that's the universe itself.
The universe
We
itself.
dwell here. This is our world. These are the hells. These are the heavens. And in the heavens are the gods. And so all is within the mother. Translated into philosophy, she is time, space, causality.
Time, space, causality.
Schopenhauer was the first Western philosopher to recognize this. Kant's critique of pure reason, where he sets up the forms of sensibility, time and space, and the categories of logic as being the limitations of our consciousness, had just published his work when the translations out of India began coming in. Schopenhauer recognized that Maya and Kant's forms of sensibility and categories of logic were the same. All of our thinking and knowing is within these bounds. Everything we experience is within the field of time and space. Everything that we think is thought out in terms of the categories of logic and of pairs of opposites. But the ultimate mystery that we seek to know is transcendent of these bounds.
Bounds.
So you ask, is
Of
God
philosophy?
one is a category of thinking? God is not one, God is not many. Is God? Is not categories of logic. It's beyond that. So anyone who thinks he has named God has made a fundamental mistake. He has mistaken his own concepts for their reference.
All right, so this is my beautiful grandmother. In this video, he was explaining time, space, and the realm of causality and what that has to do with the great mother and the divine feminine essence of life and nature itself and how that ties into philosophy. Observation. A lot of times white men argue with other white men when they talk publicly. And I don't know if they're trying to be disingenuous to indigenous spirituality or indigenous systems or ancient spirituality. And I say that because his only reference point about God and his argument was juxtaposed against him and what another white man said about God. But God comes later on down the line when you understand ancient history. We have motifs, signs, and symbols, myths, and parables, and archetypes of nature. And then through that and from that, we get our gods. Now, when he showed the Great Mother, the body of her was the soul, the center of her was where we were. Then we had lower depths of her into her chaos, into hell, and above her was the heavens and the other so-called gods, or what you would call the ascended beings, or this, that, and the other. First point I want to make here is many people have explained that image and that picture many different ways in many different cultures. I just want to get that out the way. Now, dealing with like a Protestant or a Catholic, a lot of the modern arguments about God, you're really, the argument is about really how white people see God. So what is really going on planet Earth a lot of the times, as far as even sometimes the centrality of the beef of the four Abrahamic religions, we have a problem with whiteness is our metaphysical center. Now, if you take whiteness from the metaphysical center and you put it back into indigenous spirituality or nature, the nuances of God immediately become bigger and better different things. Essentially, not only were these white people colonial in distant past, but they actually literally thought the stuff that they were thinking. Like when we read Christopher Columbus, or when you read the Papa Bulls, or when you read the early church fathers, it's actually kind of weird to understand like this is exactly what they thought of the physical world. But the beautiful thing about this video, though, is the divine feminine in her essence of heavens, her central reality where we are, and down into her depths of hell. He tied it to time, space, and causality, into philosophy. And this is something that I do in my works. I bridge all these things and synthesize all these matters together in an orderly fashion so you guys can understand what's going on in the spiritual world and how that connects to the observable universe. This hasn't been done in the way that I'm doing it, because historically we're still arguing over which way the white man sees God. A lot of black arguments today, they're not even really rich melanated non-ether being arguments. We're really arguing over how the white man sees God. Granted that we leave that alone and go back to our mother, go back to the womb, the matrix of the universe, go back to the divine feminine and divine masculine and how that energy works in tandem. Not only will we get the truth, but the conversation will be better for us to even get the truth from the conversation. It depends from Ulodumare. Right, I'm not gonna go too crazy because y'all need to pay for that. But let's just start here randomly. Look at this sacred symbol of Mu. This is 25,000 years old. If you guys remember, the biblical timeline is like 2,000 years old. You double that, that's four. You double that, that's six. Christopher Columbus thought he had 150 years left to do the bidding for God. So you just got to understand these timelines are very, very important. So this is just a symbol of Mu. We just start in just a random place, okay? So the double triangle, a pair of triangles bound together at their base, thus forming a double triangle, was an ancient symbol for an offering and often appeared on the altar where offerings were made. These altars were generally in the form of toe and had tall, a two, a toe, carved on their face in the altar. The rain brought by the two made offerings possible. These offerings generally were a form of flowers and fruit or products. Now, my point here is this is the divine feminine. This is the sacred mother. It shows up in many shapes and in many different forms. And I want to say this because women need to be encouraged to understand that there has been a diabolical attack against your wisdom, your nature, and your spirituality. And they've broken you down and split you up. Once again, in our earlier video, he said that time, space, and causality that they talk about in philosophy was tied to the divine mother. I won't get too deep, but let's look at this. Among the 12 virtues were the first of all love, then followed faith, hope, charity, and etc. The feather is another of the very prominent ancient sacred symbols. It symbolized truth, the feather of Ma'at. Three feathers adorn the crown of Mu. Three feathers were on the ornament of the head piece of Ramu, the king high priest of Mu, Nevin's Mexico stone tablet number 1780. We find feathers as symbols among the Mayas, the difference in color donating the rank of the wearer. In Mu, yellow was the color of royalty, blue of priesthood, and red of soldiers and nobility. In these ancient times, yellow appears to have been the royal color throughout the world. A dark blue is a mourning color or orient today. Research shows that the color was adopted by the Mu with sacrifice and corresponds with the color of the burial shroud, the blue waters of the Pacific Ocean. The feathers worn by the North American Indian today is the relic which he is inherited from his forefathers. Whether they know the original meaning of the feather, I can say not. When on the warm path, however, the ends of their feather was red, corresponding to the red feathers of soldiers and the nobility of Mu. In Egypt, however, we find more extensive information. Now, and I have to introduce you guys. Remember, I showed you the tree of life, and it was a serpent going around a tree, and the serpent actually represented the divine mother. You're going to see this in indigenous spirituality and really all of spirituality. You cannot deny the serpent. The reason why the serpent is demonized in scripture is because that is a destiny swap to the annihilation of the divine feminine. And that is one of the most painful things that has happened on the earth. A lot of times when you see women act in the way that they act in any way, shape, manner, or form, it's actually because they've been destiny swapped. And also, as far as men, we need to understand the ethereal realms, our realm, and the realms down into hell. And we do not have those understandings at the time because of things that are being submerged by the submersion of the divine feminine. We must understand that the rich melanated non-ether being female womb man is a direct correlation to all epitomes of nature, and we can understand them through her. I might butcher a few words, but follow me. So, mysteries of ancient South America. So we're going to tie the divine feminine just to South America. We can go all over the world, guys. We can go all over the world, my baby, but we're going to start South America. So Brazil, Mexico, Egypt, and China. These symbols are universal. The woman is universal. The divine feminine is universal wisdom. The symbol of Egypt's Urias, idea of cunning or wisdom. So cunning and wisdom. Once again, I told you guys the tree of life in and of itself is the divine feminine. What happened in church biblical culture is the divine feminine has been submerged in hidden under dogma, but she's still here, plain and hidden in plain sight. So idea of cunning and wisdom. It is also a symbol of Quetzalcoatl. Y'all see what it is. The wise man in black of Hey, Brazil, who civilized the barbarians and savages of Central America, perhaps about 12,000 BC. You see that same T from Mu in Brazil, Mexico, China, and Egypt and India. Sign, which sometimes represents two arched eyebrows united to the nose, is identical to the toe in the Greek alphabet and corresponds with the Egyptian. All right, this will make sense at the end, but let's go here because people forget the basics. So, Egyptian hieroglyphics functions as a full writing system in contrast to proto writing, which only conveys limited information and is not capable of reflecting the complexities of the language. So, hieroglyphics are our people reflecting the complexities of the language. Use a combination of logograms, symbols representing whole words or concepts, phonograms, symbols representing specific sounds or syllables, and der- determinatives, symbols that clarify meaning but are not read aloud, making them a versatile tool for recording spoken Egyptian language in its entirety. We can't forget that because all of this is the divine feminine and the complexities of life and nature. Now, remember, the white man was talking about time, space, and causality. So I want to connect this right to scripture and show you how the divine feminine is hidden right in plain sight. So, meaning the openeth of the matrix. The phrase openeth the matrix refers to every firstborn, whether human or animal, that comes from the mother's womb. In biblical language, the matrix means womb or the place of origin, and in this passage establishes God's claim on all firstborn as a sign of his sovereignty and the covenant relationship with Israel. So this Israel, the mind balanced against the spirit, producing electromagnetism. That's another form of Israel. And it's a covenantal relationship. The use of his and sovereignty, his is important, but the thing about men when you talk, what'd you say? Okay. The thing is when you talk about men, you have to understand men are beings that cross the primordial waters of the divine feminine anyway. So men get here through the womb. Now we could go on about all this stuff for days, but let's just zero in back on the feather of truth. Now, some of these would be looked at as men, but understand that wisdom is a feminine aspect, and it's something that's even rendered unto men. As men understand who they are and what the universe is and what the womb of life is and how to use the laws of nature, compensation, cause and effect, transmutation to their benefit, they are rendered unto wisdom. And wisdom is the feather, which is a feminine principle. You cannot move anywhere in the observable universe without understanding the divine feminine. And that's why that video was so important, which we started with, which the white man is talking about. And he's going into time and space and causality. So when you see all of our symbols, you need to see time and space and causality. You need to know what you're looking at. You need to know that hieroglyphics is a codex of getting more depth and nuance of language. See, that's why a lot of times today we can't communicate. We can't communicate today because we've had writing systems and pictograph systems that have more nuance and depth to them. That's kind of the reason why I think a lot of times children in child development are so frustrated because they're a little bit beyond this world, and this world needs to do what's necessary to keep up with the child, which is closer to the understanding of how things would be in order from the divine mother because they just got here. Now, this here, guys, is a very advanced teaching that I teach in my scholarly school. So this is the matrix of the mind. And we're going to do two things here. So it says that if the womb is the matrix of life, the imagination is the matrix of the mind. So man cannot see, the Bible talks about how the double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Well, he's unstable because he doesn't understand the matrix of his mind. So this is what is proxy to the death of the divine feminine in us unaliving her in the mental allegorical use of life. So let's refix this today. So the divine partnership, God is both creator and creatures. The blueprint of the ancient, the blueprint of the architect, masculine principle, okay, first masculine principle must meet the nurturing depth of the womb, feminine principle to bring thought into substance. So for thought to come into substance, man must understand these things. The inner law is mankind returns home when aligned with this inner balance, knowing that wisdom flows from the ethereal her. Okay, so things are birthed from her. The spiritual unit, one plus one equals two. Okay, a whole expressed in parts, proving that creation is born from inseparable balance. And then I go to this architect of reality. Yeah, the divine feminine is the architect. So we get into the origin, the subconscious, superconscious mind, which is the realm of divine flow and divine purity work, where the realm of divine design and creative ideals. The pure divine idea is received as an electromagnetic blueprint. Then we get into the lens, the grandfather mind. I'll break that down. How you see these things, north, south, east, and west, as the actor, as the observer, the uses of the mind. This is true knowledge. This is how you literally take over the world. I'm explaining and breaking this down. Then you get to the engine. The engine is the 11 faces of light. So the name of my new book is The Nature of Light. And the nature of light is hidden in ever-present laws, patterns, methods, and sequences. So the superconscious must process the blueprint through the laws of vibration, rhythm, and correspondence. So I just give you three right there. So vibration, rhythm, and correspondence. Meanwhile, remember the white man said that philosophy addressed time and space and causality. All right, and last but not least, the manifestation, heaven on earth. Once again, as in heaven, so shall it be on earth. We would never have heaven on earth unless we deal with the divine feminine and we live in order to that wisdom. I've broken this down. I so much I have to say, but I've broken this down already in many ways. So this says the manifestation. The physical world conforms to the frequency. Nature, light, and slow motion physically builds the fruit of the original seed. And then we got the benediction. May the eyes of your understanding be forever open to the patterns of the divine as you step forth from these pages. Remember that you are not merely a tenant of the earth, but that you are a designer of destiny. So once again, here's just a little bit of 411 on the divine feminine. Ladies, I love you. Ladies, men, we love you. We are sorry for the pain that we put you guys through. And a time is coming and a new dawn is here as we go back home to the principles of home, to the design and shape and the fluidity that comes through the woman. I hope you enjoyed this. Shout out to all my ladies, all my mother goddesses. At Depe for Ulu Dumare, I just want to thank the ancestors for this transmission, and I thank the divine feminine for imparting into me such wisdom. Go in peace.